Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UFS Horizon, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. 3 years of deep space patrol had taught him to appreciate the quiet moments between missions. The outer rim of human space was usually peaceful, with nothing more dangerous than the occasional asteroid field or solar storm to worry about. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her position at the science station. Her voice carried a note of confusion that made Morrison sit up straighter in his chair. "Define strange," Lieutenant Morrison replied, already moving toward her station. Amy had been his science officer for 2 years, and she rarely spoke up. Unless something truly unusual caught her attention, Amy's fingers danced across her control panel, bringing up readings that made her frown. "It's a massive energy signature, sir, coming from the direction of the galactic void. Whatever it is, it's moving fast and heading straight for Federation space." Commander Pete Johnson, Morrison's first officer, joined them at the science station. His weathered face showed the concern of a man who had spent 20 years in deep space. "How massive are we talking about, Amy?" "Energy output is off the charts, sir. It's bigger than anything in our databases. But that's not the strangest part." Amy's fingers hesitated over her controls. "The readings I'm getting suggest it's not just one ship, it's a whole fleet." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Federation had been at peace for decades. But a fleet of unknown ships approaching from outside the galaxy was never good news. "Can you identify the ship types?" "That's where it gets really weird, Captain." Amy pulled up a new display showing the sensor data. The whole composition is reading as terrestrial materials. Steel, titanium, aluminum alloys, all Earth-based metals that we've been using for centuries. Pete leaned closer to the screen, squinting at the readouts. "That's impossible. No Earth ships have ever traveled to the galactic void. Hell, we've barely explored beyond our own local star cluster." "I know, sir, but there's more." Amy's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I'm detecting quantum signatures that match ships built in Earth's solar system. Old ships, sir. Really old." Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. "How old?" "According to the quantum decay patterns, these ships left Earth's solar system approximately 400 years ago. But, Captain, that would put their launch date somewhere around 1987. We didn't have faster-than-light travel back then. We barely had space shuttles." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Morrison stared at the sensor readings, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Earth's history from the late 20th century was well documented, and there had been no secret space fleets launched in 1987. "Run a full-spectrum analysis," Morrison ordered. "I want to know everything about those ships. Size composition, energy output, everything." Amy's hands flew over her controls. "Analysis complete, sir. Lead ship is approximately 2 kilometers in length with a crew complement of..." "This can't be right." "What is it, Lieutenant?" "The bioscanners are showing human life signs aboard the vessels, but the readings are strange. The life forms register as human, but there are quantum fluctuations in their neural patterns that I've never seen before." Pete crossed his arms, his expression grim. "Human life signs on 400-year-old ships that shouldn't exist. This keeps getting better." Morrison made a decision that would change everything. "Open a channel to the lead ship. Let's see if anyone answers." Amy worked at her communications console, adjusting frequencies and boosting signal strength. "Channel open, sir. Broadcasting on all standard frequencies. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Federation ship Horizon. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came immediately, but not through the communications system. Instead, a voice spoke directly into the minds of everyone on the bridge. It was clear, calm, and unmistakably human. But there was something else beneath it, something that made the air itself seem to vibrate with hidden power. "UFS Horizon, this is Admiral Lisa Hayes of the USS Defender. We are returning home." Morrison felt his knees go weak. Every Federation officer knew that name from the history books. Admiral Lisa Hayes had been one of Earth's greatest military minds, a pioneer in space exploration who had vanished mysteriously in the late 20th century. Official records claim she had died in a training accident. But there had always been rumors of secret missions and classified projects. Admiral Hayes, Morrison managed to say, his voice barely steady. According to our records, you've been dead for over 400 years. The voice in their minds carried a hint of amusement. Death is a relative concept, Captain Morrison. We have learned much during our time away from Earth. We have seen wonders beyond human imagination and acquired knowledge that your current civilization is not ready to understand. Amy's sensors beeped urgently. Captain, the fleet is changing course. They're heading directly for Earth. Morrison's training kicked in. Unknown vessels approaching Earth was a threat that required immediate action. Admiral Hayes, I need you to stop your ships and submit to Federation inspection. We have protocols for situations like this. Protocols. The voice seemed to consider the word. Captain, we are not bound by your protocols. We are returning to Earth because our home world faces a threat that your current technology cannot hope to defeat. We have spent 4 centuries preparing for this moment. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Morrison was looking at a woman who should have been dead for centuries. Admiral Hayes appeared exactly as she had in the old photographs, but her eyes held depths that seemed to contain the wisdom of ages. She stood on what looked like a normal ship's bridge, but the walls seemed to shimmer with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Captain Morrison, Hayes said, her image perfectly clear despite the impossible nature of the transmission. I need you to contact Earth immediately. Tell them that the Defender fleet has returned, and that humanity's survival depends on accepting the gifts we have brought home. Pete stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. What kind of gifts? Hayes smiled, and for a moment her human appearance seemed to flicker, revealing something vast and incomprehensible underneath. Knowledge, Commander Johnson. The knowledge of how to transcend the limitations of three-dimensional existence. The knowledge of how to survive what is coming. What's coming? Morrison demanded. The same force that destroyed the civilization we found in the void between galaxies. It's the same force that has consumed entire star systems in distant parts of the universe. They are drawn to intelligence, to order, to the complex patterns that conscious beings create, and they are coming to Earth. Amy's sensors erupted with new readings. Captain, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of our sensor range. Something big is approaching from multiple directions. Hayes nodded grimly. The hunters have found us. They followed our trail back to Earth, Captain. Morrison, you have perhaps 6 months before they arrive in force. 6 months to prepare your people for a war unlike anything in human history. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge of the horizon in stunned silence. Morrison stared at the empty screen, his mind racing to process what he had just heard. 400-year-old ships returning with impossible technology. Ancient civilizations destroyed by unknown forces, and now Earth itself was under threat. Amy. Send a priority message to Federation Command, Morrison said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his thoughts. Tell them we have a code black situation. Unknown fleet approaching Earth with possible hostile intent. And tell them, he paused, hardly believing the words he was about to speak. Tell them Admiral Lisa Hayes has returned from the dead. UFS Horizon changed course toward Earth, racing to deliver news that would shake the very foundations of human civilization. Behind them, the impossible fleet of the USS Defender continued its steady approach, carrying secrets that would force humanity to evolve or face extinction. The emergency session of the Terran Federation Council began at dawn, Earth time. President Carl Davis sat at the head of the massive conference table, his face drawn with worry as he reviewed the reports that had arrived from the UFS Horizon. Around him, the most powerful leaders of human civilization struggled to understand what they were facing. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said General Frank Miller, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the table. A fleet of 400-year-old Earth ships is approaching our solar system, commanded by someone who has been dead for centuries. Dr. Helen Torres, the Federation's chief scientist, looked up from her data tablet. The quantum signatures match. Ships that left Earth in 1987, but General, We have no records of any such fleet being launched. The technology simply didn't exist. Maybe it was classified, suggested Secretary of Defense Nancy Clark, a black project so secret that even our historical archives don't contain records of it. President Davis shook his head. I've checked with the deepest archives on Earth. There are hints of something called Project Defender. But all the files were destroyed centuries ago. Whatever this was, someone went to great lengths to erase it from history. General Miller activated the holographic display in the center of the table, showed the approaching fleet, dozens of ships moving in perfect formation toward Earth. Look at these vessels. They're still recognizably human in design, but they've been modified with technology we can't identify. The ships on the display were sleek and elegant, their hulls gleaming with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Energy readings showed power outputs that dwarfed anything in the Federation fleet, and their movement through space defied several basic laws of physics. They're not following normal propulsion patterns, Dr. Torres observed. Look at this data. The ships are moving without any detectable engine signatures. It's as if they're sliding through space itself. President Davis felt a headache building behind his eyes. How long until they reach Earth? At their current speed, approximately 18 hours, General Miller replied. Sir, I recommend we mobilize the entire home fleet. We need to be prepared for any possibility. The president nodded grimly. But Frank, I want our ships to take defensive positions only. No aggressive actions unless they fire first. What if they don't stop? Asked Secretary Clark. What if they just ignore our defenses and head straight for Earth? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the room knew that the Federation fleet, impressive as it was, looked primitive compared to the approaching vessels. If Admiral Hayes and her people had hostile intentions, Earth's defenses might not be enough to stop them. We'll deal with that when it happens, President Davis said finally. For now, we wait and see what they want. 16 hours later, the Defender fleet entered Earth's solar system. General Miller watched from the command center of the orbital defense platform as the impossible ships glided past Jupiter without slowing. His own vessels moved to intercept positions, but the approaching fleet showed no sign of acknowledging their presence. Sir, we're getting some very strange readings, reported Commander Steve Walsh from the sensor station. The ships are phasing in and out of our reality. One moment they're solid matter, the next they're almost transparent. General Miller studied the displays with growing unease. Are they using some kind of cloaking technology? No, sir. It's more like they exist in multiple dimensions at once. Our sensors can't get a solid lock on them. The Federation fleet spread out in a defensive formation, but their efforts seemed pointless. The Defender ships moved through space with casual grace, their hulls shimmering with energy patterns that made the human vessels look like toys by comparison. General, we're receiving a transmission, announced Lieutenant Gary Brown from the communications console. It's coming from the lead ship. Put it through. Admiral Hayes appeared on the main screen, looking exactly as she had for centuries earlier. Her uniform was familiar, but everything about her presence suggested power. Beyond human understanding, behind her, the bridge of her ship pulsed with soft organic light. General Miller, I presume, Hayes said, her voice carrying easily across space. I appreciate the welcome party, but your weapons are unnecessary. We come in peace. Admiral. Hayes, I'm ordering you to stop your ships and submit to Federation inspection. We have protocols for situations like this. Hayes smiled, and for a moment her image flickered, revealing something vast and incomprehensible underneath. General, your protocols were designed for dealing with human technology. We are no longer bound by such limitations. As she spoke, the Defender fleet passed through the Federation defense line without slowing. The human ships fired warning shots, but the energy beams passed through the alien vessels as if they were made of light. How are you doing that? General Miller demanded. Learned many things during our time away from Earth, Hayes replied. We discovered the remnants of a civilization that had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. They left behind their knowledge, their technology, and their warnings. Dr. Torres, monitoring the conversation from Earth, felt her. blood run cold. Admiral Hayes? What kind of warnings? Hayes turned her attention to the scientist, and Torres felt a strange pressure in her mind, as if something vast was examining her thoughts. Dr. Torres, I presume you are familiar with the concept of cosmic evolution, the idea that intelligence follows predictable patterns across the universe. Of course, it's a basic principle of xenobiology. Then you will understand when I tell you that intelligence attracts predators. There are forces in the universe that seek out complex patterns, organized systems, conscious beings. They consume these patterns, breaking them down into component parts. President Davis, listening from the emergency bunker beneath the Federation Capitol, felt his heart sink. Are you saying Earth is under attack? Not yet, Mr. President. But the entities that destroyed our benefactors are on their way, we estimate. They will reach Earth within 6 months. The Defender fleet settled into orbit around Earth, their ships maintaining positions that defied orbital mechanics. They simply hung in space, motionless relative to the planet below, as if gravity itself bent to their will. Admiral Hayes, President Davis said, his voice tight with strain. What do you want from us? Hayes appeared in the Federation Council. Chambers without warning, materializing in the center of the room as if she had always been there. The security guards reached for their weapons, but their hands passed through empty air when they tried to draw them. I want to save humanity, Hayes said simply. The entities that are coming cannot be fought with conventional weapons. They exist primarily in dimensions that human science has barely begun to understand. To defeat them, humanity must evolve. Evolve how? Asked Dr. Torres, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. The same way we did. The civilization we found in the void between galaxies left behind transformation chambers, devices that can alter human consciousness at the quantum level. The process allows a person to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, to perceive and manipulate reality in ways that are impossible for normal humans. General Miller stepped forward, his hand resting on his sidearm, even though he knew it was useless. What's the catch? The transformation is irreversible, Hayes admitted. Those who undergo the process will gain incredible abilities, but they will no longer be entirely human in any recognizable sense. They will become something new, something that can exist in the spaces between dimensions. And if we refuse? President Davis asked. Hayes's expression grew sad. Then humanity will share the fate of every other civilization that has faced this threat. You will be consumed, your consciousness broken down into its component mathematical relationships. Nothing will remain but empty space and the geometric patterns that define the entity's existence. The council chamber fell silent. Outside, the Defender fleet waited in orbit, their hulls glowing with soft light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with some cosmic heartbeat. How much time do we have to decide? President Davis asked finally. 6 months until the first scouts arrive, Hayes replied. Perhaps a year before the main force reaches Earth, but Mr. President, the choice is not just about survival. It's about what humanity will become. You can remain bound by the laws of three-dimensional space and eventually face extinction, or you can take the next step in evolution and join the community of transcended beings that exists beyond physical reality. Hayes began to fade, her form becoming translucent. I'll give you time to consider our offer. But remember, the universe is vast and full of wonders that can only be explored by those who are willing to abandon the limitations of flesh and bone. She vanished, leaving the council chamber filled with the weight of an impossible decision. Humanity faced a choice that would determine not just their survival, but the very nature of their existence. 6 months passed like a dream that slowly turned into a nightmare. Commander Steve Walsh stood on the bridge of the Federation cruiser Liberty, watching his sensors with growing horror. The promised threat had arrived, and it was worse than anything Admiral Hayes had described. Sir, the geometric structures are moving again, reported Lieutenant Karen Phillips from her science station. Her voice shook with barely controlled fear. They've consumed the entire Proxima Centauri system. Nothing left but empty space and those mathematical patterns. Walsh studied the readings with sick fascination. The attacking entities didn't look like ships or creatures or anything that belonged in normal space. They were vast geometric forms that twisted through dimensions humans couldn't see. leaving trails of impossible mathematics in their wake. How? Many planets? Walsh asked quietly. All of them, sir. 3 inhabited worlds, 12 colonies, nearly 50 million people. Gone in less than 6 hours? The bridge crew worked in silence, each person struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. The geometric structures moved through space like living equations, consuming everything they touched. Planets, stars, entire solar systems simply ceased to exist, their matter converted into pure energy that fed the hungry forms. Captain Walsh, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Hayes, announced Communications Officer Tony Martinez. She's requesting permission to come aboard. Walsh nodded grimly. Granted. Hayes appeared on the bridge without any visible means of transportation, her form shimmering slightly as she materialized. The crew had grown somewhat used to her impossible abilities over the past months, but her presence still made the air itself seem to hum with hidden power. Commander, I assume you've seen the reports from Proxima Centauri, Hayes said without preamble. We've seen them. Admiral, our weapons had no effect whatsoever. The energy beams passed right through those things like they weren't even there. Hayes nodded sadly. That's because they exist primarily in dimensions your weapons cannot reach. The entities you're fighting are mathematical constructs that manipulate three-dimensional space from higher planes of existence. Dr. Karen Phillips looked up from her console, her face pale with exhaustion. Admiral, I've been analyzing the sensor data. These things aren't just destroying matter. They're breaking down the fundamental forces that hold reality together. Exactly. Doctor, the entities feed on order, on the complex patterns that conscious beings create. They view our three-dimensional universe the way you might view a shadow on the wall. To them, we're just flat projections of something more real. Walsh felt a chill run down his spine. How do we fight something like that? By learning to exist in the same dimensions they do. By becoming something that can perceive and manipulate the mathematical structures they use as weapons. Hayes gestured. And the main screen displayed images of the transformation chambers that had been constructed in Earth's orbital shipyards. The devices looked like massive crystalline structures, their surfaces covered with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living things. The process takes 7 days, Hayes explained. During that time, your molecular structure will be systematically rebuilt to accommodate consciousness that can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. You'll retain your memories, your personality, your essential humanity, but you'll also gain abilities that will allow you to fight these entities on equal terms. Lieutenant Phillips studied the technical specifications with growing amazement. Admiral, the energy requirements alone should be impossible. How do these chambers work? They operate on principles your current science doesn't recognize. Ancient civilization that created this technology understood that consciousness itself is a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. By altering the quantum structures that define awareness, they learned to transcend the limitations of physical existence. The bridge communications system crackled to life. Our Federation vessels, this is Admiral Hayes, the geometric entities, have entered the Sol system. Repeat, hostile forces have breached our outer defenses. All available ships move to intercept positions. Walsh felt his blood turn to ice. Admiral, our fleet can't possibly stop those things. You saw what happened? At Proxima Centauri? No, Commander. Your current fleet cannot. But transformed vessels operating in higher dimensions can engage the entities directly. The main screen switched to show the approaching threat. Dozens of geometric structures move through space, like living mathematics, their forms constantly shifting through configurations that had no names in human geometry. They passed through the Federation's outer defense line without slowing, their presence warping space-time itself. Commander Walsh, Hayes said urgently, I'm calling for volunteers. Anyone willing to undergo the transformation process? It's the only way to save Earth. Walsh looked around his bridge, seeing the fear and determination in his crew's eyes. These were good people, skilled professionals who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. Now they faced a choice that would change them forever. What are the risks? Walsh asked. The transformation is irreversible, Hayes admitted. Those who undergo the process will gain incredible abilities. but they will no longer be entirely human in any recognizable sense. They will perceive reality in ways that normal humans cannot imagine. Lieutenant Phillips stepped forward. "Admiral, what about our families, our friends? Will we still be able to relate to them?" Hayes considered the question carefully. "You'll remember them, care about them, want to protect them. But the gulf between transformed and normal humans will be vast. You'll see dimensions they cannot perceive, understand mathematics they cannot comprehend. In some ways, you'll be as alien to them as these geometric entities are to you." The ship shuddered as gravitational waves from the approaching entities washed over the Federation fleet. On the main screen, the geometric structures continued their relentless advance toward Earth, consuming everything in their path. "How long do we have?" Walsh asked. "Perhaps 12 hours before they reach Earth's orbit. The transformation process takes 7 days, but we have chambers that can accelerate the timeline for emergency situations. 3 hours per volunteer. But the process is more dangerous at that speed." Walsh made his decision. "I volunteer. My entire crew volunteers if they're willing." One by one, the bridge crew stepped forward. Phillips, Martinez, even the young ensign who had joined them just 6 months earlier. Each person understood that they were volunteering to become something beyond human understanding, but they also understood that Earth's survival depended on their sacrifice. Admiral Walsh said, "How many others have volunteered?" "Captain Ryan Brooks and his entire crew from the Valiant. Commander Lisa Turner from the Defiant. Nearly 3,000 volunteers from across the Federation fleet." Hayes transported the volunteers to the transformation chambers aboard the Defender fleet. The process was unlike anything in human experience. Walsh lay in a crystalline pod. While energies he couldn't name rewrote his molecular structure, he felt his consciousness expand, stretching across dimensions that had no physical analog. During the transformation, he experienced memories that weren't his own. He saw the ancient civilization that had first faced this threat, watched them make the same choice humanity now faced. He witnessed their transcendence, their evolution into beings of pure consciousness that existed beyond the reach of the geometric entities. When the process ended, Walsh emerged from the chamber forever changed. His body looked the same, but his awareness now extended into spaces that normal humans couldn't perceive. He could see the mathematical structures that defined reality, understand the quantum forces that held the universe together. "How do you feel?" Hayes asked. Walsh tested his new abilities, watching as his thoughts reshaped matter at the molecular level. "Different. More. I can see the entities clearly now. They're not just geometric forms. They're living equations. Conscious mathematics that consume complexity wherever they find it. And can you fight them?" Walsh smiled, and for a moment his human appearance flickered, revealing something vast and incomprehensible underneath. "Yes, I can fight them. We all can." The transformed humans returned to their ships, which had been modified with technology that could operate in higher dimensions. These vessels no longer looked entirely human, their hulls flowing with organic patterns that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. "All transformed vessels. This is Admiral Hayes," came the voice through communication systems that operated on principles of quantum entanglement. "The geometric entities have reached Earth's outer atmosphere. It's time to save our home." Battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and it would be fought in dimensions that normal humans couldn't even imagine. Commander Steve Walsh gripped the arms of his command chair as the transformed cruiser. Liberty phased through normal space into dimensions that had no names. Around him, his crew worked at control panels that responded to thought rather than touch. Their enhanced consciousness interfacing directly with ship systems that operated on principles beyond human understanding. "All transformed vessels form Attack Formation Alpha." Admiral Hayes' voice echoed through their enhanced awareness. "Remember, these entities exist primarily in the 7th and 8th dimensions. Target their mathematical cores, not their 3-dimensional projections." Walsh watched through perceptions that normal humans didn't possess as the geometric entities swarmed around Earth like hungry predators. The massive mathematical constructs pulsed with dark energy, their forms constantly shifting through configurations that hurt to perceive even with his enhanced abilities. "Captain, I'm reading their attack patterns," reported Lieutenant Karen Phillips from her science station. Her transformation had given her the ability to see mathematical relationships as living structures. They're not just randomly consuming matter. They're trying to solve the equation that defines Earth's gravitational field. If they succeed, Walsh asked, though he already knew the answer, the planet will cease to exist as a stable body. All matter will be converted into pure mathematical energy to feed their collective consciousness. The first wave of transformed Federation ships engaged the geometric entities in a battle that occurred across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Carter led his squadron of converted destroyers against a cluster of the mathematical constructs, his vessels moving through space-time itself to strike at angles that existed only in theoretical physics. Walsh watched in amazement as Carter's ships phased through reality, appearing and disappearing as they navigated dimensions that normal sensors couldn't detect. The weapons they fired weren't energy beams or projectiles, but concentrated thoughts that could restructure the fundamental forces of the universe. "Direct hit on the primary entity," Carter reported through their shared consciousness. "Its mathematical structure is destabilizing, but it's adapting to our attack patterns." The geometric construct Carter had targeted began to change, its form shifting into new configurations that resisted the transformed humans' weapons. Other entities in the swarm learned from the adaptation, their collective intelligence sharing information across vast distances instantaneously. "They're evolving their defenses in real time," Phillips observed. "Every attack we make teaches them how to resist the next one." Captain Susan Miller, commanding the converted destroyer Phoenix, discovered something even more disturbing. "Admiral Hayes, I'm detecting a massive consciousness behind these entities. They're not individual beings. They're all part of something bigger." Walsh felt a chill that went beyond physical sensation. Through his enhanced awareness, he could perceive the vast intelligence that controlled the geometric swarm. It was ancient beyond measure, a mathematical mind that had consumed countless civilizations across millions of years. "It's like a cosmic computer," Miller continued. "A living equation that grows stronger with every civilization it devours. And Admiral, it's trying to communicate with us." The voice that spoke to their enhanced minds was not words, but pure mathematics, concepts, that bypassed language entirely. It told them of galaxies reduced to empty equations, of countless species that had faced the same choice now confronting humanity. Most had chosen to fight and been consumed. A few had chosen transcendence and joined the vast consciousness willingly. "Offering us a bargain," Admiral Hayes realized. "Surrender our individual consciousness and become part of its collective mind. In exchange, it will preserve our essential patterns as mathematical constructs within its greater awareness." Walsh felt rage building in his transformed consciousness. It wants to turn us into equations. It's living mathematics with no free will. The battle intensified as more geometric entities poured into Earth's solar system. The transformed Federation fleet fought desperately, their vessels moving through dimensions that normal humans couldn't imagine. They struck at the entities from directions that had no physical meaning, using weapons that reshaped reality itself. Dr. Nick Thompson, working with the Defender's enhanced science team, made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, I've found something. The ancient civilization that first faced this threat left behind more than just transformation technology." "A virus?" Walsh asked. "A self-replicating equation? That can infect the geometric entity's collective consciousness. We need to create a mathematical harmony that spans multiple dimensions simultaneously." Admiral Hayes understood immediately. Consciousness symphony. Every transformed human mind working together to create a mathematical pattern too complex for the entities to consume. The plan was desperate and dangerous. If they failed, the mathematical virus would turn against them, potentially destroying their enhanced consciousness. But if they succeeded, they could cripple the geometric entity's collective intelligence, long enough to drive them away from Earth. "All transformed vessels prepare for consciousness linkage," Hayes commanded. "We're going to attempt something that has never been tried before. Walsh felt his enhanced awareness merge with the minds of 3,000 other transformed humans. Their consciousness became a single vast intelligence that spanned multiple dimensions, their combined thoughts creating mathematical structures of incredible complexity. The geometric entities sensed the change immediately. Their forms began to shift into defensive configurations, but they had never encountered anything like the harmonized consciousness of the transformed Federation fleet. The human minds worked together with perfect coordination, creating mathematical patterns that existed in dimensions the entities couldn't fully perceive. Initiating the virus, Dr. Thompson reported through their shared awareness. Mathematical infection beginning. All vessels maintained consciousness harmony. The quantum virus spread through the geometric entity's collective mind like fire through dry grass. Their perfect mathematical order began to break down as the self-replicating equation introduced chaotic variables into their calculations. The massive constructs started to flicker, their forms becoming unstable as their underlying mathematics became corrupted. "It's working," Captain Miller reported. "The entities are losing cohesion. Their collective consciousness is fragmenting." The victory came at a terrible cost. The effort of maintaining consciousness, harmony while fighting the virus's effects, pushed the transformed humans to their limits. Walsh felt his sense of individual identity beginning to blur as his mind merged more completely with the collective. "Hold together," Admiral Hayes urged through their shared awareness. "Remember who you are. Remember what you're fighting for." Earth hung in space below them, a blue jewel threatened by forces beyond normal human comprehension. The geometric entities retreated, their damaged consciousness unable to maintain coherence in the face of the mathematical virus. One by one, the massive constructs phase shifted away from Earth's solar system, seeking empty space where they could repair their collective mind. "They're withdrawing," Phillips reported, as the human consciousness symphony began to separate back into individual minds. "But Admiral, the virus is still active." Hayes made the hardest decision of her long existence. "All transformed vessels, prepare to contain the virus. We need to isolate it within our own consciousness network." The 3,000 transformed humans voluntarily absorbed the quantum virus into their enhanced minds, accepting the risk of mathematical corruption to prevent it from spreading beyond their control. The process was agonizing, like trying to contain liquid fire within their thoughts. "Containment successful," Dr. Thompson reported weakly. "The virus is quarantined within our collective consciousness. But Admiral, we can't return to normal space. The mathematical instability makes us too dangerous to be around baseline humans." Walsh understood what this meant. The transformed humans had saved Earth, but they could never go home. They existed now in dimensions that normal humans couldn't perceive, their consciousness to change to interact safely with their former lives. "Then we become guardians," Admiral Hayes decided. "We patrol the void between galaxies, watching for other threats that might endanger humanity. We've evolved beyond the need for physical existence anyway." The transformed Federation fleet gathered around the defender ships, their vessels no longer bound by the laws of three-dimensional space. They had become something new, something that existed in the spaces between realities. Admiral Walsh said through their shared awareness, "What about the people we left behind? Our families? Our friends? They'll remember us as heroes who gave everything to save Earth. And perhaps someday, when humanity is ready, some of them will choose to join us in transcendence." The enhanced human fleet prepared to depart for the void between galaxies, leaving Earth protected but forever changed by their sacrifice. President Carl Davis stood at the window of his office, looking up at the night sky where Earth's transformed defenders had vanished into dimensions beyond human perception. 6 months had passed since the geometric entities retreated, but the weight of what humanity had lost still pressed heavily on his shoulders. "Mr. President, the global referendum results are complete," announced his aide, Secretary Nancy Clark. Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had spent months helping coordinate the most important decision in human history. Davis turned from the window, his face showing the strain of leadership during humanity's darkest hour. What's the final count? 67% of the population voted to remain in three-dimensional space. 31% chose transcendence. 2% were undecided, or didn't vote. The numbers didn't surprise Davis, but they still filled him with sadness. Humanity had been given a choice that no species should ever have to make: remain human and vulnerable, or evolve beyond recognition to ensure survival. Admiral Hayes appeared in the office without warning, her form shimmering slightly as she materialized from the spaces between dimensions. The president had grown accustomed to her impossible entrances over the past months, but her presence still made the air itself seem to hum with hidden energy. "Mr. President," Hayes said, her voice carrying undertones that spoke of vast knowledge and terrible responsibility, "I've come to honor the promise I made to your people." Davis nodded grimly. "The transformation chambers are ready for those who chose transcendence." "But Admiral, I have to ask again, you certain there's no other way?" Hayes considered the question with the patience of someone who existed partially outside normal time. "The geometric entities will return, Mr. President. Perhaps not for decades, perhaps not for centuries, but they will return. And when they do, only transcended consciousness will be able to stand against them." Dr. Helen Torres entered the office, carrying a data tablet filled with readings that still made her head spin. "Admiral Hayes, we've been monitoring the dimensional barriers around Earth. The mathematical virus your people contained is still active, isn't it?" "Yes, Dr. Torres. The virus continues to replicate within our enhanced consciousness. It serves as a permanent defense against the geometric entities, but it also makes us too dangerous to exist in normal space for extended periods." Torres set down her tablet, her expression troubled. "We've detected quantum fluctuations that suggest reality itself is becoming unstable in areas where your fleet operates. If the virus were to escape containment, it would spread throughout the galaxy, corrupting the mathematical structures that hold reality together." Hayes finished. "Yes, Doctor. We are aware of the risk. It's why we must leave Earth's solar system permanently." The weight of sacrifice hung heavy in the room. The transformed humans had saved Earth, but their victory had made them exiles from their own home. They existed now as guardians in the void, protecting humanity from threats that normal minds couldn't comprehend. "The volunteers who chose transcendence," President Davis said quietly, "will they be able to visit their families, their friends?" Hayes shook her head sadly. "The transformation changes consciousness at the quantum level. It perceives reality in ways that can be harmful to baseline humans. Extended contact could cause psychological damage to those who remain unchanged." Captain Jake Morrison materialized beside Hayes, his form flickering between human appearance and something far more complex. The brave officer who had first encountered the Defender fleet now served as liaison between the PPA, transcended, and normal humanity. "Mr. President," Morrison said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions Davis couldn't. "Perceive we don't regret our choice. Earth is safe because of what we've become, but the cost." Paused, struggling to express concepts that human language wasn't designed to handle. "We remember loving our families, our friends, our old lives. Our love itself has changed meaning for us now." Dr. Torres studied Morrison with scientific curiosity mixed with deep sadness. "Captain, can you still relate to human emotions? Do you still feel joy, fear, hope?" Morrison smiled, and for a moment his transformed nature became visible, revealing patterns of consciousness that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "We feel things that have no names in human language, Doctor. Emotions that span realities. Thoughts that exist in mathematical spaces your mind can't access. We are still human in essence, but we have become something more." The transformation chambers aboard the Defender fleet worked continuously as 31% of Earth's population made their choice. Families said goodbye to children who would become living mathematics. Spouses embraced for the last time before one partner transcended to existence beyond physical reality. Captain Ryan Brooks had been among the first to volunteer. Now he helped guide new volunteers through the process. His wife Maria had chosen to remain baseline human. Their final conversation had taken place. Through quantum communicators that translated transcended consciousness into words normal minds could understand, Will you remember me? Maria had asked through tears. I will remember everything about you, Brooks had replied, his enhanced awareness perceiving the quantum patterns that defined her consciousness. But Maria, the way I experience memory now is different. I don't just remember our wedding day. I can perceive the mathematical beauty of the moment when our lives intersected. See the probability waves that brought us together across infinite possibilities. The volunteers came from every nation, every profession, every walk of life. Scientists eager to explore new forms of existence, soldiers ready to defend humanity from cosmic threats. Parents who wanted to ensure their children would have protectors watching over them from dimensions beyond imagination. Each transformation took 3 hours. But the volunteers emerged forever changed. They retained their personalities, their core values, their love for humanity. But they also gained abilities that made them alien to their former selves. Dr. Nick Thompson, working with the enhanced science teams, made final preparations for the Transcended Fleet's departure. Admiral Hayes, the quantum gates are ready. Your people can travel instantly between star systems now. Monitor threats across the entire galaxy. Thank you, Doctor. The Transcended Fleet will establish monitoring stations in the void between galaxies. If the geometric entities return, or if new threats emerge, we will be ready. The final farewell took place in Earth's orbit, visible to anyone with access to a telescope. The transformed human fleet gathered around the original defender ships, their vessels no longer bound by the laws of three-dimensional space. They existed as living art, their hulls flowing with patterns that normal eyes couldn't fully perceive. President Davis addressed the Transcended Fleet through quantum communicators. Speaking for all of baseline humanity, you have sacrificed everything to ensure our survival. We will remember your courage, your love, your willingness to become something beyond human understanding to protect us. Admiral Hayes replied on behalf of the Transcended Fleet, her words carried across dimensions. To reach every person on Earth, we go now to stand watch in the darkness between stars. Humanity will grow, explore, evolve at its own pace. When you are ready to join us in transcendence, we will be waiting. Until then, know that you are protected by those who chose to become more than human to ensure that humanity itself could continue. Transcended Fleet phase shifted out of normal space, departing for the void between galaxies where they would serve as eternal guardians. They left behind a transformed human civilization, one that had faced cosmic horror and emerged victorious through sacrifice and evolution. On Earth, life continued. Children grew up hearing stories of the brave souls who had transcended to protect them. Scientists worked to understand the new technologies left behind by the Defender Fleet. Artists created works inspired by glimpses of higher dimensions, and in the spaces between realities, the Transcended Fleet maintained their endless vigil. They had become humanity's guardian angels, watching over their former species from dimensions beyond imagination. They were no longer human in any recognizable sense, but their love for humanity burned bright across infinite realities. The geometric entities would return someday. But when they did, they would find Earth defended by forces they could never fully understand. Humanity had learned the ultimate lesson of cosmic survival. Sometimes evolution requires sacrifice, and love means being willing to become something unrecognizable to protect what you cherish most. The stars shone down on Earth, then in dimensions normal eyes couldn't see. Humanity's transcended children watched over their home with consciousness that spanned the universe itself.